Among these dragon green hills of sheep and solace sits a machine that is overwhelmingly alien in its surroundings. Broad, low and snarling with naturally aspirated American excess, the Corvette Z06 is a unicorn. Its existence in the UK strangled by the fact that it's only just becoming available to buy over here. This one has been borrowed from Germany, and sure enough, it's due back on the Eurotunnel just a few hours from now. His visit to our little island as brief and short-lived as a tank of Shell's finest in its 70-litre tank.
But because it's here for such a short amount of time, it's only right that we maximise what we're going to do with it. And we know from drives in America that this is an outstanding supercar that goes way beyond anything that's come out of the States before. So ideally, we need an exceptional rival that's also equally as unfamiliar in its surroundings. This ought to do it. It's a Porsche 911 GT3 RS, and it's those last 5 letters and numbers that make this unique, an outlier in its surroundings. This isn't just a Porsche sports car, it's a fully dialed in 4-litre aeroed up GT3 racing car for the road. And if you thought the Corvette was out of its comfort zone, then this thing may as well have just landed on the moon.
As it stands, the 911 GT3 RS is the ultimate 911. Costing almost £200,000, it takes the already incredible 911 GT3 and turns the wick up to 11. At 184 miles an hour, it generates 860 kilograms of downforce. It has its own DRS system, like an F1 car. You can adjust the damper and diff setup using toggles on the steering wheel, and the 4-litre naturally aspirated flat-six engine revs to 9,000 RPM. The term race car for the road is often overused, but if anything were to truly deserve the title, this is it.
Now there's an awful lot to talk about with this car, and if you want to see what it's like on track, then take a look at the video I did last year when it first came out. But one of the main differences between this and the regular GT3 is the aero. So it's got twice as much downforce as the previous gen 911 GT3 RS. It's got 3 times as much as the regular GT3, and roughly speaking, 5 times as much as the Z06. In fact, total downforce is around about the same as a 911 RSR racing car in Le Mans spec. It is utterly insane, and on track it makes the world of difference, but out here on the bumpy, often wet Welsh roads with a speed limit of 60 miles an hour, no, it doesn't really do anything. I can't honestly tell you that I can feel the difference. I would be lying.
Unsurprisingly, one of the GT3 RS's biggest selling points isn't all that big out on the public road. Aero simply doesn't work properly at these speeds. And it does beg the question, can you even enjoy this car out here, or is it just a bit too much? Have we reached a point where this racing car for the road just doesn't work on the road?
No, I don't think we have, because while the aero might be insignificant, there are things about this car that you can appreciate even at lower speeds. For example, the steering wheel in my hands is just absolutely lovely. It's the perfect width, weight, material. It's fantastic. Also, the driving position. I am so slammed down to the deck in this that any lower, and I reckon my buttocks would be chafing the speed bumps as I'm driving along. And then there's these gear shift paddles. They're part of the optional Weissach pack, and they've got magnetic qualities so that when you make a gear change, it makes a very satisfying click. It's really nice to use. And then also you've got a proper gear lever. You don't get that on regular 911s, not even the turbo. It's only the GT models that have this, and it's just great to have a gear lever.
The details are exceptional, and they help create a low-speed experience that feels incredibly special. And then, once you do get the chance to wind things out, the engine takes over. A 4-litre naturally aspirated flat 6, the GT3 RS produces 518 brake horsepower and 343 pounds-foot of torque. Compared with the Corvette, and indeed many other supercars, that doesn't sound like an exceptional amount, but the truth is that it's brilliantly judged for the road. And even then, 0 to 62 miles an hour takes just 3.2 seconds, with 0 to 100 miles an hour in 10.6. Top speed, meanwhile, is lower than the regular GT3, but it's still very high at 184 miles an hour.
One of the things I noticed about driving the GT3 RS on track was that the engine, as incredible as it is, it felt, well, a little bit underwhelming in terms of its straight line performance when you compare it to how incredible the chassis is in the corners. But out here, where the roads are smaller and you've got things approaching you quicker, you don't feel like it's not fast enough. It feels plenty quick enough. Compared to the regular GT3, it's running hotter cams and you've also got shorter gear ratio, so there is a bit more punch in the mid-range. It's not turbocharged supercar quick, but I just love how, and I'm going to say it, how analog it feels. There we go. There's the buzzword for a 911.
That's one of the things about the GT3 RS. It manages to combine incredible motorsport tech with a feeling of old school excitement, much of it from the engine. But when it comes to driving it on road, some of that tech is crucial to how the driver engages with the car.
So take a look at this. Using these very nice colour-coded toggles on the wheel, and they're really nice quality. They're not like the ones that you get on an AMG, which really feel quite plasticky. You can change the damper, the bump and rebound settings, the diff, the traction control, the ESP, all just on the steering wheel. And what I like about it is it adds an extra layer of involvement, and it allows you to start fiddling around with your car to tailor it to how you want it to handle. And what I want to do is use this corner as an example. Now, I noticed on exit that I'm getting a tiny bit of understeer from the front under power. So what I want to do is go into the bump and rebound settings, and I'm going to change it so that on the front end, I've got slightly stiffer rebound, so that should hopefully keep the weight over the nose for a little bit longer and give me better bite on the front wheels. And I'm also going to switch it so that I've got stiffer compression on the rear. The idea being that it gives me a little bit less traction in the rear and it shifts the balance so that I should get less understeer. Now let's try it. So I've got a similar left-hander here. Let's turn it in and get on the power on the way out, and sure enough, it's not quite entirely fixed it, but there's certainly a difference. You can feel the back wanting to rotate more, and it's just adjusted the whole balance of the car by shifting the various bump and rebound. I mean, you could spend ages playing with this. And I do think it's a bit of a shame that Porsche hasn't allowed you to do presets. So you've got one preset for Silverstone, one for Spa, one for Brands Hatch, or maybe one just for your favorite road. That seems like such an obvious thing, but they haven't done it. Can't have everything, I guess.
It's a seriously clever yet surprisingly intuitive system. And what's more, it can even help tame what could potentially be one of the GT3 RS's biggest downfalls on the road.
And believe it or not, this has 50% stiffer spring rates than the regular GT3, and that is already a very stiff car. So the thing that I wanted to know is, can it actually be usable out on the road, or is it just a big jumpy mess? And the answer to that is that this car has possibly some of, if not the finest damping tune that I have ever experienced on a road car. You can tell how stiff it is. It is blindingly obvious, but it never feels too much. It takes the bumps so well. I don't know how they've done it. I really don't know how this thing isn't unbearable. But it's brilliant. The bigger issue actually is the refinement. It is loud. The tyre roar, the wind noise, the engine. On the motorway, it drones on a bit. you do have to be committed. But once you get to the destination, it all becomes worth it. And actually, I almost forgot, there is a neat little hack to make the ride comfort even better than how it is in normal mode, because you can use the bump and rebound settings and settle the whole thing down to the point where I think you're actually getting a better ride quality than you would do with the PASM suspension in its normal setting. It just feels like it breathes a bit more. It's not the best setup for driving along a twisty road, but if you're on the motorway, pop it in track mode, soften everything up, and you've got a really quite pliant ride quality, which I think is actually maybe a little bit smoother than some GT3 ride qualities that I've driven. I've taken so many different types of car down this road. It's not a perfect road surface, but it's got all sorts of corners, and none have been able to deal with the imperfections quite like this. It really makes you question how this is a racing car for the road, because it seems just so well suited to a good road that I don't know how you could actually improve on this. It's really sensational. The most interesting bit for me is that this is a step forward from the GT3, a car that some people said was just too much for the road. But this, it doesn't feel like it is. It feels really quite suited out here. I mean, yes, the GT3 is going to be more usable. I think it's a bit more refined at speed. It's got a proper boot. This doesn't, because of the central radiator in the front. But as an experience, and as something to take down your favourite piece of tarmac, oh my word, this is something else. But there is another car on this test, and I'm really quite excited to drive it. So let's jump out of this, give it a rest, and see how the Corvette takes on this Welsh mountain road.
At around $140,000 or £110,000 in 3LZ trim with a Z07 pack and carbon wheels, the Corvette is significantly cheaper than the GT3 RS, yet it's not coming in under baked on power. The Z06 has a 5.5-litre V8 that makes 670 brake horsepower and 460 pounds-foot of torque. With fluids, it weighs in at about 1.7 tonnes, but even so, 0 to 60 mile an hour takes just 2.6 seconds, while top speed is up to 195 miles an hour.
Now, if you've never driven a Corvette before, you're probably thinking that it's going to have a big, lazy V8 engine that's got loads of torque and low-down burble, but it doesn't rev particularly high or hard or fast. But with this, you can forget that. It's completely different, and that's because this is the first naturally aspirated V8 Corvette to have a flat plane crank engine. And that's the kind of thing that you'd usually associate with European exotica like Ferrari. And the story goes that Corvette did actually use a Ferrari 458 engine as inspiration. They bought one unseen off eBay for $25,000. It arrived, much to their delight, and they took it apart and they took learnings from it. And while they didn't quite match the power per litre of the 458, they got damn close. And what they did do is make the most powerful, naturally aspirated V8 engine ever. And they also made a Corvette engine that revs to 8,600 RPM. This is completely different from the engine in the C8 Stingray. It's actually derived from the C8R GTLM Racer. And it is fantastic to be driving a new naturally aspirated V8 engine that's as powerful as this one. It's just so silky smooth, and it rushes towards that 8,600 RPM red line. You have to keep repeating it because it's just so alien in a Corvette. This feels like an engine swap on Forza Horizon, but in real life. Feels wrong, but also somehow just so right.
As a first attempt, it's a staggering effort from Corvette for which they should be applauded. However, it doesn't quite manage to hit the heights of the Porsche's 4-litre flat 6.
For example, it's great at high revs, but elsewhere it can feel so smooth and polished to the point where it's almost overly sanitized. Also, the noise it makes isn't particularly memorable, and then the gearbox. It does its job, the down changes are quick enough, not particularly snappy, but there's just no sense of theatre. From a usability point of view, this V8 is fantastic, but as an experience, it doesn't quite have that last layer of just sheer excitement that the very best engines do.
Stacking up against Porsche's millionth attempt at a naturally aspirated engine was always going to be a tall order, yet where the Z06 really could steal the GT3 RS's thunder is in the corners. It has much less downforce, but as we know, that's pretty much irrelevant out here. It's also not as stiff and should be less uncompromising for everyday use.
On the motorway and around town, this is, I think, just a bit better because it's more refined, it's quieter. You can hear yourself think at high speeds. I mean, it's not perfect. The steering wheel is a very strange shape. It's not actually a wheel. The stalks are atrocious quality. The driving position, it's not as good as the Porsches. It's not as low. But even so, if I was going to do a long journey, I'd rather take this. It's just better on the motorway at being, well, trying to be a GT car.
To help the Z06's cause further, this one comes with the optional carbon wheels and the Z07 pack, featuring ridiculously sticky Michelin Sport Cup 2R tyres. The GT3 RS is on Cup 2s, carbon brakes and upgraded aero. In short, it's a weapons-grade setup, and while the Z06 is around 200 kilograms heavier than the GT3 RS, it really can push it hard on these undulating Welsh roads.
Once you get heat into these tyres, and that is absolutely critical, the mid-corner speed that you can take is utterly insane. Now, in fact, I think you can probably take more than you can even in the Porsche. And of course, a lot of that is going to be down to the tyres, but it's also that the balance of this mid-engine car is obviously just inherently better. Wow, there's so much lateral grip. But then once you get to faster corners, that's where the Porsche pulls a gap, because on a road like this where there's lumps and there's bumps and undulations, the Corvette steering is more guided by the road. It'll feel more nervous, it's less assured. The Porsche, it just tracks straight and true, and it means that you can feel more of what's going on underneath you. The steering has way more feel in the Porsche. In this, you're not entirely sure what it's doing, but you are being taken in different directions. And as a result, it's not quite as satisfying, and you don't have quite as much confidence in it. And that's a shame, because I think if there was a bit more feel through the steering and a bit more connection to the road, you could trust the amount of grip that this car has more. But as it is, I'm just still holding back a little bit, because I'm not sure what it's going to do if it suddenly starts to break out. In the Porsche, you're aware of everything that's going on underneath you. But saying all that, it is exciting, it is fun, it does keep you on your toes, and of course there's just so much pace from that engine. Ooh.
Coming into this test, I really didn't know what to expect from both of these cars. The Z06 is a Corvette unlike any other, and the GT3 RS, while brilliant on track, could easily have felt overwhelming on these mottled and often greasy British roads. But in truth, both cars were and are brilliant. The Z06 has the silky engine and searingly capable chassis to silence any lingering stereotypes about American sports cars, while the Porsche somehow manages to transfer its ability on track into an entirely different arena. It also wins this test because of the depth of what it offers. A near-perfect cabin and driving position teamed with shockingly good damping and arguably the greatest engine of the last decade, are hard to beat. The Porsche wins on this occasion, but the revelation that is Corvette's finest ever sports car proves that the gap could well be about to close.